Apologies ahead of time, everybody. I have all of my fans running here in the lab because it is extremely hot in here and I don't have air conditioning. So you're going to hear the buzzing in the background. Nothing I can do about that. But if you ever made a cream that looked great in the jar and then it felt like nothing the second that it hit your skin, it's not your skin, it's your formula. I see this constantly. People add more oil or they swap in a richer butter. They even bump up the percentages and the cream still soaks in and disappears in like 20 minutes. That's really frustrating, especially when you're trying to formulate something that needs to be for genuinely dry skin and it just isn't holding up. Here's what's actually going on though. It's not how much lipid you're using, it's the ratio between your lipid types. Most homemade creams are built on one or two oils doing all of the work, when a richer, longer lasting cream needs three different lipid categories working together. And that's exactly what a ratio like the 242 is designed to fix. So today I'm breaking down a triple lipid 242 dupe formula, why that ratio matters, and how to build it yourself. But before we get into the formula, a quick update on my surgery since many of you have been asking. Long story short, I am now scheduled for July 14th. This video is going to be coming out on the 11th, so it's just a couple of days before my surgery date. We shall see if they cancel at the 11th hour like they did the last time. I don't think that's going to happen this time because they did approve the outpatient surgery for this procedure, so fingers crossed. Now, let's talk about why thin creams happen in the first place. A lot of DIY creams feel thin because they're built around one kind of lipid doing all of the work, usually just a liquid oil, maybe with a single butter thrown in. That gives you slip and a nice initial feel, but it doesn't give your skin barrier the variety it actually needs. Skin doesn't rely on just one type of lipid to stay comfortable. It relies on a mix of fatty acids, cholesterol-style lipids, and ceramides working together. When your formula only mimics one of those, you end up with a cream that feels okay in the jar, but doesn't really stick once it's on the skin. This is the part most people get wrong. They assume that rich means more oil, so they bump up the oil phase percentage. And instead of getting a richer cream, they get a greasy one that takes forever to absorb without actually fixing the thin, fleeting feel they were trying to solve. Here's where it gets frustrating. When people try to fix a thin cream by adding more oil or swapping in a heavier butter, they usually throw off the whole emulsion. The texture gets unstable, the cream can separate over time, or it just feels waxy and sits on top of the skin instead of blending in. Other folks go the opposite direction. They add more emulsifying wax to thicken it up. That makes the cream feel heavier in the jar, but it's a false fix. You're adding structure, not nourishment. So the cream still doesn't perform the way a genuinely rich cream should. And this is the part that trips people up most. Thickness and richness are not the same thing. A cream can be thick and still feel thin on the skin, or it can be lighter in texture but feel incredibly rich because of how the lipids are layered. If you don't understand that distinction, you'll keep tweaking the wrong variables over and over. So here's the actual fix. Instead of relying on one lipid type, you build the formula around three categories in a specific ratio. In this case, 242. One category brings flexibility and slip. The middle category brings the bulk of the structural richness, and the third brings a long wear, cushiony finish that doesn't disappear in 20 minutes. When these three work together in the right proportion, you get a cream that feels substantial without being greasy, and that holds up on the skin for hours instead of minutes. That's the whole idea behind a triple lipid approach. It's not about more lipid overall, it's about balance between lipid types. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that 242 ratio breaks down, which ingredients fill each role, and how to build it yourself. So you're not guessing anymore, and you're not chasing richness by throwing more of one ingredient at the problem. So once you understand that richness comes from the balance between lipid types, the formulating decisions actually start making sense instead of feeling random. You're not picking ingredients because they sound fancy or because a label says luxurious. You're picking them based on the role that they need to fill in that ratio. That's why I built this formula in categories first. before I ever land on specific ingredients. I decided what each slot in the 242 needs to accomplish on the skin. And then I chose ingredients that actually do that job, not the other way around. So let's go category by category, and I'll show you how each part of this ratio earns its place in the formula. Let's start with our main vessel of distilled water. This is going to make up the biggest chunk of the batch, just over 57%. It's our base, and everything else gets built into this. Disodium EDTA goes in next. This is our chelator. Its job is to grab onto trace metal ions that can sneak in through your water or other raw materials and mess with the stability of your preservation system over time. Mix this until it's fully dissolved before you move on. So our next three ingredients are glycerin, propanediol, and dipropylene glycol. All of these go in together at this stage. These are your humectants and your solvent supports. They're going to help pull in and hold moisture, and they also help dissolve a few of the other water phase ingredients more evenly. So that is our glycerin, propanediol 1,3, dipropylene glycol. Mix until everything is uniform. You might have still some crystals on the bottom. That's okay. We can pop it on top of our hot plate just to dissolve those in a minute. But in the meantime, let's add our sodium citrate and our citric acid. They come in as a pair. Together, they act as your buffer system, which keeps your pH sitting in a stable, predictable range instead of drifting around as the batch comes together. This is the sodium citrate, citric acid, and your Sepenov EMT10 is your polymer thickener and emulsion stabilizer for this phase, and it needs a gentle hand. Sprinkle it in slowly across the surface while mixing it. If you just dump it in one spot, that's the fastest way to end up with clumps that never fully hydrate. So we're just going to sprinkle it in all across the top of the surface here. We are going to plop this on top of the heat. All right, we're just going to go ahead and set this aside for now. Let that start swelling. And next, we're going to start working on phase B. We're going to start off with Lotion Pro. This is our primary oil in water emulsifier, and it's the ingredient responsible for actually holding your oil and water phases together once they're combined. So this needs to be fully melted and evenly distributed before emulsification. Then we have cetyl and cetyl alcohol. Both are fatty alcohols, but they're playing slightly different roles. Cetyl alcohol, this one, builds the thick structured body that you feel in a jar cream. While cetyl alcohol, on the other hand, contributes to more of that soft, cushioned slip on the skin. Next, we're going to be adding our fatty acid contributors. This is stearic acid, and these acids are part of the two in that 2:4:2 ratio. They add density and structure to the finished cream, and they work alongside the fatty alcohol to build that rich, substantial feel. So this is the stearic acid. And then next we have palmitic acid. Then we have our cholesterol, and this is a key player here. It's the second piece of the lipid puzzle, included specifically to round out that lipid profile that this style of cream is known for. This is part of that 2:4:2 combination. This is the 4 part. Then we have dimethicone and hydrogenated polyisobutene. And these are both included for cushion and glide. Dimethicone is going to bring a silky silicone-based slip, while the hydrogenated polyisobutene adds a richer, more occlusive feeling cushion on top of it. This is the dimethicone and the polyisobutene. Next is our C1215 alkyl benzoate. This is an ester, and its job is almost the opposite of what you'd expect from an oil phase. It actually lightens the after feel, helping the cream glide on without feeling greasy. If you've been watching me for any length of time, you will have noticed that I have pretty much kind of gotten away from adding a lot of oils in my formulations because oils equals grease. We don't want our products feeling greasy. So then we're going to put in some EcoSil. Make sure I don't spill that. This is going to round out that unsaponifiable style lipid support in this blend. And olive squalene finishes the phase as a lightweight, skin-compatible emollient that blends seamlessly with everything around it. So this is our EcoSil and the olive squalene. So now we're just going to plop both of these phases up on top of the hot plate and let everything start melting down and start coming up to temperature a little bit so that we can continue hydrating that polymer. Okay, once you can see that all of the powders in your oil have completely dissolved, there's no floating cholesterol around there, we're going to start adding these two, your water phase and your oil phase. Just slowly start pouring in while you're mixing in a steady little stream. Don't just dump it in all at one time. All right, we're going to get in here with our homogenizer. This is a very tiny batch, as you can see. So I'm going to try my best not to get air bubbles in here, but it's going to happen. I know it is because it's just a tiny little batch. All right, that is good enough. Now we're going to switch over here to our overhead stirrer. I have my anchor attachment on today. All right, let's just turn that on and get that going. And we're just going to let that mix for a little while as this batch starts to cool. We want the cream to keep moving the entire time. Okay, once your batch drops below 120, it's time to bring in the rest of our cool down ingredients. So we're going to start off with our ceramide complex, and this is the third piece of our 2-4-2 inspired ratio. It needs to go in slowly with thorough mixing to disperse evenly throughout the cream. Emulsifying is going to come in next. Also going to add this nice and slow under good mixing, like the Sepanov that we did earlier. This is another ingredient where patience pays off. If you dump it all in one spot, it's going to lead to localized clumping, and that's hard to mix back out. Just give that a little bit to mix in. Okay, so as your batch continues cooling down, now it's time to add the powders. We're going to be adding dry flow and micro silica spheres. These both contribute to that soft focus, that dry touch that the finished cream is known for. And they go in gradually, sprinkled, rather than just dumped in. We don't want to have clumping going on, so we're just going to gradually sprinkle this in. This is the dry flow. To go ahead and put in those micro silica spheres. So at this point, the cream is getting nice and thick. And the last ingredients that we are going to be adding is our preservative, our caprylyl glycol, and then I have a combination of lavender, rosemary, and sage. SkinCeuticals uses lavender, rosemary, and peppermint. I didn't want peppermint, so I chose sage instead. So I mixed everything and combined them well beforehand so that they can disperse more evenly once I'm adding this to the main batch, which I'm going to do now. Did I mention the preservative is Euxyl PE? Euxyl PE 9010 with caprylyl glycol and those essential oils in a tiny, tiny amount. I mean tiny. And we're just going to let this go to keep on mixing. Our last ingredient to go in is going to be our vitamin E, and we're going to mix that until everything is fully uniform. I'm just going to let that continue going, and then I'm going to pull it off, cover it, and just let it sit overnight, and I will bring you guys back in the morning, and we'll take a look at it. It's the next day. Let's take a look at our cream. Very, very, very hot in the lab today. Very hot. You can probably hear the fans going on in the background. But I've already tested the pH on this, so you guys do that too. Let's go ahead and get this in the jar. Here's the finished product, looking beautiful. Compare this to the price tag of the SkinCeuticals Triple Lipid Restore 242. My Lanta, how do they charge that much? I don't even know. Put it in a little fancy jar, make it yourself. Well, let's try it, shall we? I already have tried this. I tried this on my face. Because of the way that this was built, it's a really nice, thick, rich cream. It's too much for my face. That being said, I am going to use this on both of my arms because my arms tend to get pretty dry and they look kind of wrinkly and crinkly, especially in the summertime when there's a lot of moisture loss in my skin. So I am going to use it for that, but it's a little bit too much for my face. I really, really love my facelift cream. It's my favorite of everything that I've ever made. It's my favorite. You guys should try that. I'll put the link down below. So when you take a look at this, this is what that ratio actually looks like when it's finished and cools. Let's try some on our skin. So let's just spread a little bit here. I want you to see what's happening. It holds its shape in the jar. It's a nice thick cream, but not something that you would pump or squeeze out of a tube. And that's intentional given how much structural lipid is built into this formula. So you see how this is going on? It's gliding on nice and smoothly without dragging. And you can see it's sitting on top of the skin before it starts to blend in. You can see it's just kind of just sitting there before you start blending it in. And that's the cushion from the silicone and the emollient blend doing its job. So then give it a minute. Notice that it's not disappearing instantly the way that a thin lotion would. It's settling in, it's leaving behind a soft, smooth finish. It's not greasy or tacky. And that lingering cushion is the entire point of building a cream around 3 lipid categories instead of just one. It's an absolutely delightful cream. I'm very, very happy with it. But like I said, it's just a little bit too much for my face. I am going to use it on my arms though. What I'll usually do is, and I've already done this, excuse me, off camera, is I rub it in fully and then 10 minutes later, I give a little bit of a check. And if it still feels smooth and slightly cushioned rather than sticky and non-existent, that's the ratio working the way that it's supposed to. And this cream definitely delivered. What did we learn today? A cream feels thin, not because you're using too little oil, but because you're relying on one type of lipid to do the job that really needs 3 of them working together. Once you understand that fatty acids, cholesterol, and ceramides each play a completely different role, rich stops being a guessing game and it starts being something that you can actually engineer. That's the real fix for the problem that so many of us run into. Adding more of one ingredient never gets you there, but balancing the ratio between lipid types does. So if your next cream still feels thin, don't reach for more oil. Look at your lipid categories first and ask yourself what's missing, not how much more you need to add. If you found this content helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with another DIY skincare maker who's tired of thin and disappointing creams. If you want the full written tutorial for this one, along with the rest of the formula library, you'll find them all over on Patreon. Thanks for hanging out with me today at Creation Station. I'll see you in the next formulation, but remember, surgery is only a couple of days away, and I'll be recovering for 2 to 3 weeks with some things coming out, of the leg. Ugh. Okay, anyways, hopefully between now, which is the end of June, and the 14th, we'll see how much content I can get uploaded between now and then. Till then, see ya.